My name is Athena Sinclair. I'm 34. 3 months ago, I flew 18 hours to attend my sister's wedding. When I arrived at the venue, my own parents blocked the entrance and told me to leave. "Only family is allowed," my mom said. "You weren't invited." I stood there in the dress I'd picked out 2 months earlier, holding the gift I'd wrapped the night before on my hotel bed, and watched my mother's face show nothing. No guilt, no hesitation, just a door closing. I'd signed every vendor contract for that wedding, every single one. My name, my credit card. I'd paid the deposit months ago and never thought twice about it. 3 days later, she called. Not to apologize. She called about a bill. $38,000. And what I said next, she didn't expect it. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back to last November. The day my sister announced her engagement. It was a Tuesday evening in London. November rain tapping against my apartment window. My phone buzzed with a FaceTime request from Brooke, my younger sister, 26, freshly graduated, still living 10 minutes from our parents in Cedar Bluff, Tennessee. I picked up. Brooke's face filled the screen, glowing. Behind her, I could see our mother Diane arranging something on the kitchen counter. "I'm engaged!" Brooke squealed, flashing a ring. "Garrett proposed last night at the vineyard. It was perfect." I felt genuine happiness swell in my chest. "Brooke, that's amazing. Congratulations." "Thanks. Garrett's family is so excited. The Caldwells already offered their barn venue. Can you believe it?" I knew the Caldwells. Everybody in Cedar Bluff did. They owned the largest auto dealership chain in 3 counties. Garrett Caldwell was the youngest son, polite, handsome, came from real money. "Mom, say hi to Athena," Brooke said, tilting the phone. Diane leaned into frame. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi, honey. Exciting news, right?" "It really is," I said. "I'll start looking at flights. When's the date?" A pause. Diane glanced at Brooke, then back at me. "Oh, don't go spending a fortune on a plane ticket. It's just a small wedding." "Mom, it's Brooke's wedding. I'm coming." "Well, we'll see." Diane straightened up. "Anyway, we've got a lot of planning to do. I'll let Brooke fill you in." She disappeared from the frame. Brooke chatted for another 10 minutes about flowers and color palettes. I listened and smiled and made notes, but something sat heavy in my stomach. That was the first time in 2 years I had a reason to go home. I should have paid more attention to how hard my mother was trying to keep me from it. 2 weeks later, Diane called. Not Brooke. Diane. On a Wednesday afternoon, which meant it was morning in Tennessee, and she'd been thinking about this since she woke up. "Athena, I need to talk to you about something practical." "Okay." "The venue requires a credit card on file to hold the reservation. Your father and well, you know our credit isn't great after the refinance, and Brooke just graduated. She doesn't have the history." I leaned back in my desk chair. I already knew where this was going. "The caterer needs the same thing," she continued. "And the florist? And the photographer? It's 4 contracts total. We just need someone with good credit to sign. You'd be doing your sister a huge favor." "How much are we talking?" "Total comes to about $41,000, but you'd only put down $3,500 as a deposit. The rest gets charged after the event." $41,000. Under my name. "Mom, that's a lot of money." "It's not your money, Athena. It's just your name on the paperwork. We'll handle the payments after. I promise I'll make sure it all gets sorted." I'd heard that promise before. When I was 22, I co-signed a car loan for my father. Took me 3 years to untangle that from my credit report. When I was 28, I wired Diane $4,000 for a plumbing emergency that turned out to be Brooke's semester tuition. But this was my sister's wedding, and I was the older sister, the one with the stable job, the good credit score, the London salary. "Fine," I said. "Send me the contracts." I told myself this was what family does. I signed every document that week without reading the fine print twice. Over the next 3 months, the wedding took shape, and I watched it happen from the outside. Brooke created a group chat called Caldwell Wedding Crew. I wasn't added. I found out about it when she accidentally forwarded me a message meant for the chat. A photo of bridesmaid dress options with the caption, "Vote, ladies." I wasn't one of the ladies. I called Brooke twice to ask about the dress code, the seating arrangement, whether she wanted me to prepare a toast. The first time, she said she'd get back to me. The second time, she let it go to voicemail and texted an hour later. "Super busy with planning. Talk soon." I called Diane to ask if there was anything else I could help with. She said, "Everything's handled, honey. You don't need to worry about a thing." I never received a formal invitation. Not a printed one, not a digital one, but I told myself that was normal. I was the sister. You don't send your own sister an invitation. She's family. She's automatically included. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Brooke posted a photo on Instagram. Rehearsal dinner at a restaurant in Cedar Bluff. Brooke in a white sundress surrounded by bridesmaids, Diane beaming beside her. The caption read, "My whole family, my whole world." I stared at that photo for 11 minutes. I counted. I wasn't in it. I hadn't been invited to the rehearsal dinner. I almost called, almost asked why, but I talked myself out of it. Maybe the rehearsal was just for the wedding party. Maybe they assumed I couldn't make it early. Maybe I was overthinking it. I set my alarm for the next morning. I had a flight to catch. I requested a full week of PTO. I only get 20 days a year, and I spent 5 of them on this trip. My round-trip ticket, London to Chicago, Chicago to Nashville, cost $1,400. The hotel in Cedar Bluff, 4 nights at the only decent place in town, $680. Brooke's wedding gift, a premium knife set she'd mentioned wanting during a random FaceTime months ago, $720. Total out of pocket before I even touched Tennessee soil, $2,800. On the first leg of the flight, somewhere over the Atlantic, I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. I'd been drafting a toast for weeks. Nothing too long, maybe 2 minutes. I wanted to tell the story of how Brooke used to make me play wedding with her stuffed animals when she was 5. How she'd always assign me the role of the priest, never the bride. I thought it was funny. I thought people would laugh. I practiced it twice with my headphones in, whispering into my scarf so the man in 14C wouldn't think I'd lost my mind. When we landed in Chicago for the layover, I texted Diane. "Just landed in Chicago, 1 more flight, can't wait to see everyone." No response for 40 minutes. Then, just before boarding the Nashville connection. "Okay, busy, see you tomorrow." 5 words, no exclamation point, no safe travels, no we're excited. I stared at the text while the gate agent called my boarding group. I almost screenshot it and sent it to my friend Leah in London with the caption, "Is this weird or am I crazy?" But I didn't. I put my phone away, boarded the plane, and told myself everything would be fine once I got there. 18 hours of travel, 5 words back. I checked into the Magnolia Inn at 9:30 on a Friday night. The woman at the front desk smiled and asked if I was in town for the Caldwell Sinclair wedding. Apparently, the whole town knew about it. I said yes. She said, "How lovely, you must be a friend of the family." I said, "Something like that." The room was small but clean. I hung my dress in the closet, a deep navy number I'd found at a boutique in Covent Garden. I set the wrapped knife set on the desk, propped my phone against the lamp, and called Brooke. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I texted Diane. "Checked in. What time should I arrive at the venue tomorrow?" 1 hour later. "Ceremony 2 p.m. That was it. No, come early. No, let's grab breakfast first. No, your father wants to see you." I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at myself in the mirror across the room. I'd flown 18 hours. I'd spent nearly $3,000. I'd signed $41,000 in contracts. And my mother couldn't give me more than 2 words and a time. The last time I'd been in Tennessee was 2 years ago, for my grandmother's funeral. Diane barely spoke to me then either. She spent the entire service whispering to Brooke and greeting neighbors. At the reception afterward, someone asked Diane how many children she had. She said, "Just the one, Brooke." I was standing 6 feet away, holding a plate of potato salad. I ironed my dress that night like I was preparing for a job interview, which, in a way, I was. I was auditioning to be part of my own family. I set the alarm for 8 and turned off the light. I couldn't sleep. The Magnolia Inn had thin walls, and the couple next door was watching a game show at full volume. But it wasn't the noise keeping me awake, it was the math. $2,800 for this trip. $38,000 still pending on my credit card. 6 years of sending money home every time Diane called with a new crisis. The water heater, Brooke's car insurance, the property tax shortfall. I never added it all up. I was afraid to. But lying there in the dark, I did something worse. I added up the other thing. The calls that never came. The birthdays where Diane texted HBD at 11 p.m. or forgot entirely. The Christmas I tried to FaceTime and no one picked up because they were at the Hendersons' holiday party and hadn't mentioned it. The graduation photos on Diane's mantle. 3 of Brooke, 0 of me. If I kept going like this, kept paying and showing up and pretending the silence didn't sting, what would I lose? Not money. I'd lose myself. I'd become the woman who buys her own seat at Thanksgiving and still gets placed at the kids' table. The woman who writes checks and gets footnotes. But tonight, I chose to believe. One more time. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe Diane was just stressed about the wedding. Maybe Brooke was overwhelmed with last-minute details. Maybe when I walked in tomorrow, my mother would hug me and say, "I'm so glad you're here." Maybe. I set my alarm and told myself, this is the last time I'll show up hoping for something they've never once offered freely. Tomorrow, I'd find out whether hope was enough. I closed my eyes. Sleep came slow and thin. Saturday, 1:45 in the afternoon. Meadow Creek Barn sat on 12 acres of rolling pasture just outside Cedar Bluff. White fences, fairy lights strung between the oak trees. A gravel path lined with mason jars and wildflowers leading to the entrance. It looked like a magazine spread. I parked my rental car at the far end of the lot. 30 or 40 vehicles were already there. Pickup trucks, sedans, a few luxury SUVs that screamed Caldwell money. Guests drifted toward the barn in clusters, clutching programs and adjusting hats. I smoothed my dress, picked up the gift box, and walked toward the entrance. My heels sank slightly into the gravel. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and barbecue smoke from somewhere behind the barn. I spotted my father first. Frank stood near the barn's double doors in a rented suit that didn't quite fit his shoulders. He was shaking hands with an older man I didn't recognize, probably someone from the Caldwell side. When Frank looked up and saw me, his face changed. The polite smile dropped. His eyes went wide, then narrow, then down at his shoes. He didn't wave, he didn't walk toward me. He turned and went inside. I kept walking. 15 yards from the entrance. 10, 5. The double doors opened from inside, and my mother stepped out. Diane wore a mother-of-the-bride dress in champagne silk. Her hair was done. Her makeup was perfect. Her jaw was set like concrete. She stopped directly in my path, hands clasped in front of her, not open, not welcoming. A barricade. "Athena." Her voice was low, controlled. "Hi, Mom. I made it." She didn't hug me. She didn't step aside. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for Brooke's wedding, Mom." "You need to leave. Now." The words landed like a slap. I blinked. The gift box suddenly felt very heavy in my hands. "What? I flew 18 hours? Lower your voice." Her eyes flicked to the guests passing behind me. "People are watching." "Mom, I'm your daughter." Diane stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, the same Estee Lauder she'd worn my entire life. Her voice dropped to a whisper that cut deeper than any shout. "Only family is allowed inside. You weren't invited. I stood there. The gravel shifted under my heels. A couple in their 60s walked past, glancing at us. The woman smiled politely. Diane smiled back. The second they passed, her face reset to stone. Not invited? I said. I signed every contract for this wedding. I paid the deposit. This isn't about money. This is about what's appropriate. Appropriate? Athena, please, don't make a scene. Behind her, through the half-open barn door, I could see white chairs arranged in rows. Garlands of eucalyptus draped from the rafters. A string quartet warming up near the altar. Everything I'd funded with my signature. Frank appeared in the doorway. He looked at Diane, then at me, then at the ground. He put his hands in his pockets and said nothing. Absolutely nothing. From inside, a woman's voice called out. Warm, southern, confident. Diane? Who's that? Everything all right? I saw Diane's spine straighten. I saw her paste on a fresh smile before she turned halfway toward the voice. And that voice, I'd learn in about 3 seconds, belonged to Margaret Caldwell, the groom's mother, the woman who'd been told my mother only had one daughter. Margaret Caldwell stepped through the barn doors in a lavender dress and pearls. She was tall, silver-haired, the kind of woman who runs the church auction and the county fundraiser and still has time to arrange her own flowers. She carried herself like someone who'd never been embarrassed in public. Not once. Diane, everything all right out here? Margaret's gaze landed on me. She smiled, open, expectant. Diane turned on like a switch. Her voice went honey-warm. Oh, it's nothing, Margaret. Just a distant relative who got the wrong venue. Happens with these big events. Distant relative. She said it while looking right at me. Margaret studied my face. Oh, I thought you only had one daughter, Diane? The silence lasted maybe 2 seconds. It felt like 20. Diane laughed, a bright, brittle sound. I do. This is a cousin, from out of town. She's just confused about the schedule. Margaret nodded slowly, glanced at me one more time, then touched Diane's arm. Well, tell her the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. We should head in. Margaret went back inside. The barn doors swung gently behind her. I looked at my mother. She looked at me. In her eyes there was no guilt, no shame, no flicker of, I'm sorry, I had no choice. Just fear. Raw, cornered animal fear, the kind that comes when a lie you've been feeding for months is about to choke you. A cousin, I said. Athena, please. You told them you only have one daughter. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand. How long? How long have you been telling people I don't exist? She didn't answer. She glanced toward the parking lot, willing me to disappear. That was when I understood. She didn't forget to invite me. She erased me. And she'd been doing it for years. Every muscle in my body wanted to walk through those doors, to stand in the middle of that ceremony and say, loud enough for Margaret and Garrett and every guest in the barn to hear. My name is Athena Sinclair. I am Diane's eldest daughter, and I paid for every flower, every plate, and every note that string quartet is playing. I didn't. I looked at the barn, the fairy lights, the garlands, the soft golden glow through the windows. I looked at my mother, still standing in my path like a sentry. I looked at my father's shadow just inside the doorway, shoulders hunched, hands still in his pockets. And I made a decision. I crouched down and set the gift box on the stone step. Gently, like it mattered. Keep the gift, I said. It's for Brooke. Diane's shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief. She thought it was over. Thank you, Athena. This is really for the... Don't. I held up one hand. Don't explain. Don't justify. I heard you. I heard every word. I turned and walked back down the gravel path, past the mason jars, past the couples still arriving, holding hands, laughing about the heat, past my rental car, and then to it. I opened the door, sat down, closed it. Then I cried. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind where your chest shakes but your mouth stays shut, because even alone in a parking lot, you've been trained not to make a scene. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes. Through the open windows, I heard the string quartet begin Pachelbel's canon. The ceremony was starting. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, Meadow Creek Barn shrank to a speck of light. I didn't slam a single door. I didn't raise my voice once. I just left. And for the first time, leaving felt like the strongest thing I'd ever done. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, Athena, why didn't you just say it? Right there in front of everyone? Trust me, I asked myself that the entire drive back to the hotel. But let me ask you something. If your mother looked you dead in the eye and called you a cousin in front of a stranger, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story is hitting close to something real for you, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Now, back to the story. I drove back to the Magnolia Inn on autopilot. The roads were empty. Everyone in Cedar Bluff was at the wedding, apparently. Inside my room, I kicked off my heels and sat on the bed, still in my dress, mascara smudged, hands shaking. The toast I'd written was still open in my notes app. I closed it without reading it. Then I opened my laptop. 4 emails sat in my inbox from the past 2 weeks. Confirmations from vendors, addressed to me as the contract holder. I'd skimmed them when they arrived. Now I read every word. Meadow Creek Barn, contract holder, Athena Sinclair. Deposit paid, $1,200. Remaining balance, $14,800. Due within 5 business days, post-event. Southern Comfort Catering. Contract holder, Athena Sinclair. Deposit paid, $900. Remaining balance, $12,600. Due within 5 business days post-event. Bluebonnet Floral Design. Contract holder, Athena Sinclair. Deposit paid, $800. Remaining balance, $6,200. Whitaker Photography. Contract holder, Athena Sinclair. Deposit paid, $600. Remaining balance, $4,400. I scrolled through each one. My name, my card number, my signature, scanned and attached in PDF. Every single contract structured the same way. Deposit up front, balance due after the event. Total deposits already paid, $3,500, gone. Total outstanding balance, $38,000. I closed the laptop, sat still. The barn was probably mid-reception by now. Toasts being made, Diane hugging Brooke, Garrett spinning his bride on the dance floor, the Caldwells clinking glasses with their new in-laws. All of it happening under contracts signed by someone they'd just called a cousin. I didn't make any calls that night. I didn't fire off any emails. I just sat on that hotel bed and let the numbers repeat in my head. $38,000, my name, their party. My phone rang at 9:47 that night. The caller ID read, Aunt Ruth. Ruth Mercer, my mother's older sister, 62, retired school principal. The kind of woman who says exactly what she thinks and has never once apologized for it. Diane called her difficult. Everyone else called her honest. Athena, where are you? I didn't see you at the wedding. I was there, Aunt Ruth. I just didn't make it inside. What do you mean you didn't make it inside? I told her. All of it. The blocked entrance. The whisper. Only family. The word cousin. Margaret Caldwell's question. Diane's answer. Silence on the line. A long one. I could hear Ruth breathing, slow, deliberate, the way she does when she's deciding exactly how angry to be. She told them you don't exist? Ruth's voice was flat, controlled, like a pot about to boil. She said she only has one daughter. Lord have mercy. A pause. Athena, listen to me. At the reception tonight, your mother stood up during the toast and said, and I'm quoting her, our little family, Frank, myself, and our Brooke. She introduced the Sinclairs like that. I sat there and thought it was strange. I almost said something. I wish I had. It's not your fault, Aunt Ruth. No, it's not. It's Diane's. And she's going to hear about it. Another pause, sharper now. Athena, those vendor contracts, the ones for the wedding, whose name are they under? Mine. All of them? All of them. Ruth went quiet again. When she spoke, her voice had shifted, still angry, but with a thread of something harder underneath, something strategic. Then you listen to me, honey. Your mama told a room full of people you don't exist. You don't owe that room a single cent. Sunday morning. I woke to a notification from Instagram. Brooke had posted a carousel of wedding photos, 14 images. The first was the two of them at the altar, Brooke in lace, Garrett in a charcoal suit, the barn glowing gold behind them. The second was the family portrait, Frank, Diane, Brooke, Garrett, Margaret, and Richard Caldwell. 6 people. 2 families joined. 1 family short a daughter. The caption, "Surrounded by everyone who matters, #Caldwell forever." I read it 3 times. Then I opened my email. The venue's invoice had come in overnight. Automated, cheerful, with a little barn logo in the header. Thank you for choosing Meadow Creek Barn. Your remaining balance of $14,800 is due by Thursday, March 6th. Below it, invoices from the caterer, the florist, the photographer, all time-stamped Saturday evening, all addressed to Athena Sinclair, all with 5-day deadlines. $38,000, due Thursday. I looked at the Instagram post again. Everyone who matters. Then I looked at the invoices. Something shifted. Not a snap. Not a sudden rage or a dramatic decision. It was quieter than that. Like a lock turning. Like a door that had been stuck for years finally clicking open. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger would come later. In waves. In the middle of the night. In the shower. During meetings I couldn't focus on. Right now, in that hotel room on a Sunday morning in Cedar Bluff, Tennessee, I felt something simpler. Clarity. I was the only person who paid for this wedding. I was the only person not in those photos, and I was the only person receiving invoices for a party I'd been thrown out of. Something had to give, and it wasn't going to be me. Not this time. Sunday afternoon. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Brooke. Not a call. She didn't try to actually talk to me. She just left a message like she was checking off a task. I pressed play. Hey, Athena! So the wedding was amazing, like literally perfect. The barn looked incredible, and Garrett's family was so sweet. Anyway, sorry things were kind of weird yesterday. Mom said it was for the best, and honestly, I think she was right. It would have been a lot to explain. But I just wanted to say thanks for helping with the vendor stuff. Seriously, you're the best big sis. Let's catch up soon, okay? Love you. I listened to it twice. Sorry things were kind of weird. Not, I'm sorry Mom turned you away at the door. Not, I should have stood up for you. Not, I had no idea. I would have fought for you. Mom said it was for the best. Brooke knew. She knew before the wedding. She knew Diane was going to turn me away, and she signed off on it. She probably helped plan it. And then that last line, "You're the best big sis." I used to love hearing that. It made me feel valued, like all the sacrifices meant something. But sitting in that hotel room, mascara from yesterday still faintly smudged on the pillowcase, I heard it differently. She calls me that when she needs something. Only when she needs something. I didn't call her back. I didn't text. I set my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. The invoices were due Thursday. My family had just told 120 people I didn't exist, and my sister had left me a voicemail that said thanks for paying. I had 4 days to decide who I was going to be. Sunday night, Magnolia Inn. The game show couple next door had checked out. The hallway was dead quiet. I sat cross-legged on the bed with my laptop open and typed into the search bar. Am I legally responsible for vendor contracts I signed for someone else's event? The answers were consistent. The person whose name is on the contract holds the legal obligation. But the person whose name is on the contract also holds the authority. I could authorize payment. I could decline it. I could redirect the invoices to the party that received the services. I picked up my phone and called Meadow Creek Barn. It rang 3 times. Meadow Creek, this is Julie. Hi, Julie. My name is Athena Sinclair. I'm the contract holder for the Caldwell Sinclair event this past Saturday. Oh yes, Ms. Sinclair. Beautiful event. What can I help you with? I need to inform you that I will not be authorizing the final payment on this contract. I was not present at the event, and I'm formally requesting that the outstanding balance be redirected to the event hosts. A pause. Oh, okay. I'll need to pass this to our manager, but, can I ask, is there a dispute? No dispute. I'm simply not authorizing the charge. The invoice should go to the Sinclair family in Cedar Bluff. Julie took my email, confirmed the request, and said someone would follow up Monday morning. I hung up and called the caterer. Same script, same calm voice, same result. Then the florist. Then the photographer. 4 calls. 12 minutes total. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't explain why. I just said one word over and over, politely and firmly, no. When I was done, I closed my laptop, brushed my teeth, and slept through the night for the first time in 2 days. Monday morning. I changed my flight. Instead of staying through Wednesday like I'd planned, I booked the first available seat back to London. A 6 a.m. departure through Atlanta. I packed in 10 minutes. Checked out of the Magnolia Inn before dawn. The same front desk woman was on shift. She smiled and asked, "How was the wedding?" "Memorable," I said. The drive to Nashville took 2 hours. On the way, I passed through Cedar Bluff one last time. Main Street was quiet. Just the diner, the hardware store, the Baptist church where I got baptized at 12. I drove past the house I grew up in. The porch light was still on. I could picture what was happening inside. Diane at the kitchen table with coffee, still high on the reception. Frank reading the paper. The house full of leftover wedding cake and congratulations cards. My name not mentioned once. When I was 10, Diane told me, "Athena, you're the big sister. You have to be strong for Brooke." I'd been strong. For 24 years. I'd been strong through Brooke's childhood illness, the meningitis scare that reshaped our entire family dynamic. I'd been strong through every financial crisis, every unanswered call, every holiday I spent alone in London pretending the time difference was the reason, not the distance. I turned onto the highway and didn't look back. 18 hours later, I landed at Heathrow. Gray sky, drizzle, the most beautiful weather I'd ever seen. I turned on my phone in the arrivals hall. No missed calls, no texts. Nobody in Cedar Bluff had noticed I was gone or cared enough to check. But they'd notice soon. The vendors would start making calls by Tuesday. The invoices would land by Wednesday, and then my phone would ring. I was sure of that. Tuesday, 3 p.m. London time, 9 a.m. Tennessee. My phone rang. Mom on the screen. I let it ring 3 times. Then I picked up. "Athena, hi honey." Sweet, light, the voice she uses when she wants something. "How was your flight back?" "Fine." "Good, good. Listen, I just got the strangest call from the venue. They said you removed your payment authorization? The bill is $38,000. How do we handle this?" "We don't handle it, Mom. You handle it." A beat of silence. "Excuse me?" "I removed my authorization because I'm not responsible for an event I wasn't invited to." "Athena, don't be dramatic. You know this was just a misunderstanding. We can talk about it." "You told Margaret Caldwell I was a distant relative. You told her you only have one daughter. That's not a misunderstanding, Mom. That's a choice." Longer silence now. I could hear her breathing change, the sweetness evaporating. "After everything I've done for you," she said, "this is how you repay me? You raised me. I'm grateful for that. But you also stood in front of your daughter and told a stranger she doesn't exist. Those 2 things can both be true. You're blowing this out of proportion. $38,000, that's the proportion." Your father is stressed. His blood pressure. If something happens to him, that's on you. Dad stood right there and said nothing. He made his choice too. Silence. I could hear her swallow. You said I wasn't family, I said. So the family's bill is the family's responsibility. The line went dead. She hung up. No goodbye, no argument, just a click and silence. I set my phone on the kitchen counter and stared at it. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was normal. And the apartment was quiet. Really, genuinely quiet. For the first time in months. She called back 40 minutes later. Different tone this time. No honey. No sweetness. Full throttle. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes. The venue is calling me. The caterer is calling me. I'm getting invoices forwarded to my email with your name crossed out and mine written in. Do you know how humiliating that is? I imagine it's about as humiliating as being called a cousin at your own sister's wedding. That is not the same thing. You're right. Yours cost $38,000. I raised you. I fed you. I drove you to school every single day for 12 years, and now, because of one little misunderstanding, you're going to bankrupt your own family? It wasn't a misunderstanding. Fine, Athena. You want to play this game? I'll tell everyone. I'll tell the whole town what kind of daughter abandons her family over money. Go ahead. I'd rather be the daughter you badmouth than the daughter you pretend doesn't exist. That stopped her. I heard her pull in a breath, sharp, involuntary, like she'd walked into cold water. You don't mean that, she said. Quieter now. I do. Another long pause. Then the final weapon, the one she always keeps in reserve. Your father could have a heart attack over this. If he ends up in the hospital, that blood is on your hands. There it was, the trump card, Dad's health, the guilt grenade. She'd thrown it at me when I moved to London, when I skipped Thanksgiving, when I stopped sending money without being asked. Dad's health is between him and his doctor, I said, not me and my credit card. She hung up again. This time, I didn't stare at the phone. I put the kettle on and made a cup of tea. By Wednesday, Diane had activated what I call the family phone tree. Every branch, every twig. Brooke called first, crying, the big, messy, theatrical kind she's perfected since childhood. Athena, please. Garrett and I just got married. We don't have $38,000. If you don't pay, we have to. We're starting our lives together and you're ruining it. Brooke, did you know Mom told the Caldwells I don't exist? A sniffle. A pause. I mean, she said it would be easier that way. With the Caldwells, you know, they're traditional, and having a daughter overseas who's not married and easier. It wasn't personal, Athena. It was just simpler. You knew before the wedding. I didn't think they'd actually turn you away. But you didn't stop them. Silence. More sniffling. Then, can we please just focus on the bill? Garrett's parents are asking questions. Then maybe it's time someone gave them honest answers. She hung up. Frank called that afternoon. My father almost never calls. He emails once in a while, short, factual messages about weather or football scores. Hearing his voice on the phone felt strange, like picking up an old tool you'd forgotten you owned. Athena, your mother is very upset. I know. Can you be flexible on this? For the family? Dad, did you know she told people I'm not your daughter? A long exhale, the sound of a man who spent 35 years choosing the path of least resistance. That's not exactly what happened. Were you there when she called me a distant relative? Right in front of me? Nothing. Then, very quietly, a click. He hung up. Every single one of them hung up when the questions got real. I was starting to see a pattern, and it looked a lot like a family that preferred silence to truth. Aunt Ruth didn't wait for permission. She never has. Thursday morning, the same day the vendor invoices were due, Ruth picked up her phone and called Margaret Caldwell directly. She got the number from the wedding program she'd kept in her purse. Classic Ruth. I wasn't on the call. Ruth told me about it afterward, and she didn't spare details. Margaret, my name is Ruth Mercer. I'm Diane Sinclair's older sister. We met briefly at the reception. Oh yes, Ruth. Lovely to hear from you. I'm calling because there's something you need to know. Diane has 2 daughters. Not 1. 2. The older one is Athena. She's 34, lives in London, works in technology. She's the one who signed every vendor contract for that wedding. Every single one. And on Saturday, Diane stopped her at the door and told her to leave. Ruth said the silence on Margaret's end lasted a full 10 seconds. I beg your pardon? Margaret said. The woman Diane introduced as a distant relative, that was her firstborn daughter. Athena flew 18 hours to be there. She paid the deposit out of her own pocket. And Diane turned her away because she'd been telling your family the Sinclairs only had 1 child. Margaret's voice went cold. Thin. The kind of cold that comes from a woman who prides herself on knowing exactly who she's doing business with. Why would Diane do that? You'd have to ask her. But I can tell you this, that girl flew 18 hours, signed every check, and got turned away like a stranger at the door, and she still didn't make a scene. That's more grace than my sister deserves. Ruth said Margaret thanked her, said she needed to make some calls, and hung up. The fuse was lit, and Cedar Bluff was a very small town. I didn't ask Aunt Ruth to make that call, but when she told me she had, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I felt seen. For the first time, someone in my family said out loud, "What happened to you was wrong." I want to ask you something. Has anyone ever been that person for you? The one who broke the silence when no one else would? Or are you still waiting? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe if you want to hear how this ends. Back to the story. Thursday afternoon. I sat at my desk in my London apartment with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and systematically closed every open account. I emailed each vendor, Meadow Creek Barn, Southern Comfort Catering, Bluebonnet Floral, Whitaker Photography. The message was identical for all 4, written with the precision of someone who writes technical documentation for a living. Dear vendor name, this email serves as formal notice that I, Athena Sinclair, the undersigned contract holder, do not authorize any further charges to my credit card on file. I am formally requesting that all outstanding invoices be redirected to the event organizers, the Sinclair family of Cedar Bluff, Tennessee. Please confirm receipt of this notice. Regards, Athena Sinclair. 4 emails, 4 confirmations within the hour. The vendors were polite, professional, and clearly not surprised. Julie from Meadow Creek even replied, "Understood, Ms. Sinclair. We've updated our records." I called my bank next, canceled the card linked to the contracts, ordered a replacement with a new number. $38,000 in outstanding charges would now route directly to the people who'd thrown the party. The deposits, $3,500, were gone. Paid months ago, non-refundable. I accepted that. Combined with my travel costs, the flights, the hotel, the gift, I was out $6,300. I sat with that number, $6,300. The price of learning that I was never going to be enough for them, that no amount of signing, paying, flying, or showing up would earn me a seat at a table they'd built without a chair for me. $6,300. Honestly, it was a bargain. I closed my laptop, rinsed my mug, and went for a walk along the Thames. The river was gray. The air was sharp, and I felt for the first time in years like I owed nothing to anyone. Friday morning, one last thing. I opened a new email. Recipients, Diane Sinclair, Frank Sinclair, Brooke Caldwell. I drafted it once, deleted it, drafted again. Too emotional, deleted. Third attempt, clean, direct, no adjectives I didn't need. Diane, Frank, and Brooke, I have formally removed my payment authorization from all vendor contracts associated with Brooke's wedding. The outstanding balance of $38,000 has been redirected to you as the event hosts. I will not be discussing this further. I wish Brooke and Garrett a wonderful marriage. Going forward, please do not contact me regarding financial matters. If any of you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty. not invoices. Athena. I read it 4 times. Checked for typos. Checked the tone. Made sure there was nothing in it that could be called petty, vindictive, or cruel. There wasn't. It was a boundary. Clean as a line on a map. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop, put on the kettle, and stood by the window. My apartment overlooks a small courtyard with a plane tree that drops its leaves all over the neighbor's bicycle. It's not much, but it's mine. I pay the rent. I chose the curtains. Nobody here has ever told me I don't belong. For months, maybe years, I'd been carrying a weight I couldn't name. The constant calculation. Am I doing enough? Am I giving enough? If I send more money, call more often, fly home one more time, will they finally see me? Standing in that kitchen, holding a cup of tea I made for myself in an apartment I earned with work I'm proud of, I felt the weight lift. I didn't write that email to hurt them. I wrote it so I'd stop hurting myself. Aunt Ruth kept me updated. She said she tried not to enjoy it, but she's a terrible liar. Margaret Caldwell called Diane the same afternoon Ruth dropped the truth. The conversation, relayed to Ruth by a mutual friend who happened to be at Margaret's house when the call was made, went about how you'd expect. You lied to us, Diane. Margaret's voice was steady, not loud. The Caldwells don't do loud. You told us you had one daughter. We welcomed your family into ours based on trust. That trust is broken. Diane tried to explain. It was a private family matter. Athena and I have been estranged. Estranged? Ruth says your daughter signed every contract for this wedding. That's not estranged. That's exploited. Margaret told Diane that the Caldwells would not be covering the $38,000. That's between you and your vendors. We didn't sign those contracts. Apparently, neither did you. Garrett confronted Brooke that evening. Ruth got this part from Garrett's cousin, who heard it through the Caldwell grapevine, because Cedar Bluff has exactly one grapevine and everyone's on it. You have a sister? Garrett said. An actual sister? And she paid for our entire wedding? And your mother kicked her out? Brooke cried. It's complicated, babe. It's not complicated, Brooke. It's a lie. Your family lied to my family, on our wedding day. The newlyweds' first real fight happened 4 days into the marriage. Over a sister the groom didn't know existed, and a bill neither of them could afford. Brooke and Garrett would end up taking out a personal loan for the $38,000. The Caldwells helped co-sign, not out of generosity, but because their name was on the event and they didn't want the vendors coming after them. The fairy tale wedding now had a monthly payment attached to it. Cedar Bluff is the kind of town where everyone knows your business by Tuesday and has an opinion about it by Wednesday. By the following week, the story had made its way through the Baptist church, the diner on Main Street, the PTA network, and the auto dealership waiting room. The details shifted slightly with each retelling, the way they always do. But the core stayed the same. Diane Sinclair hid her eldest daughter, turned her away at the wedding, and then sent her the bill. Bev Henderson, Diane's neighbor of 19 years, stopped her in the church parking lot after Sunday service. Diane, I had no idea you had 2 girls. How come I've never met your older daughter? Diane tried the script she'd been rehearsing. Athena lives overseas. We're not as close as I'd like. It's a painful subject. Bev nodded slowly. Ruth tells it a bit different. Diane stopped attending that church. She switched to the Methodist 1-2 towns over, where nobody knew the Sinclairs by name. Frank became quieter than usual, which is saying something. He stopped going to the hardware store on Saturdays, stopped sitting on the porch in the evenings. The few people who saw him said he looked like a man carrying something he couldn't put down. Diane blamed Ruth. Called her one morning, voice shaking. You destroyed my family. Ruth's response, as she told me later, was brief. I didn't expose you, Diane. I just stopped covering for you. Diane hung up. Added Ruth to the list of family members she wasn't speaking to. That list was growing. And the thing Diane had spent years building, the image of a devoted mother with a perfect little family, was crumbling. Not because anyone attacked it. It crumbled because someone finally told the truth. 2 weeks after the wedding. A text from Brooke. long, rambling. I could almost hear her crying while typing it. Athena, I'm so sorry about everything. It all got out of control. I didn't know Mom was going to say those things to the Caldwells, I swear. Garrett is furious with me. His parents barely look at me. The loan payments start next month and we're already behind on the apartment deposit. I know this is a lot to ask, but could you maybe cover part of the balance? Even half? I'll pay you back. I promise. You're my sister and I love you and I just need help right now. I read it sitting at my desk during a lunch break. Read it again. Then a third time, looking for something specific. An apology for turning me away. An acknowledgement that she knew and didn't stop it. A single sentence that said, "What happened to you at the door was wrong." It wasn't there. The whole message was about Brooke's problems. Garrett's anger, the loan, the apartment, the Caldwell's cold shoulders. My pain wasn't mentioned once. It was a crisis update dressed up as an apology. She apologized for the mess, not for the wound. There's a difference. I typed my reply carefully. Brooke, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I really am. But I can't help financially. The boundary I set isn't about money. It's about being treated like family. Real family, not the kind that gets erased when it's inconvenient. When you're ready to talk about that, and not invoices, I'm here. I hit send, put my phone in my desk drawer, went back to work. She didn't respond. Not that day, not that week. I wasn't surprised. She'd never known what to do with me when I wasn't giving her something. 1 month after the wedding, an email from Frank. My father doesn't email. He calls once in a blue moon, and when he does, he talks about the weather or the Titans' defensive line. He has never, in my 34 years of life, written me anything longer than a birthday card. So when I saw his name in my inbox with the subject line from Dad, I sat up in my chair. Athena, I know I should have said something that day at the barn. I didn't. I stood there like a post while your mother handled it, and I didn't open my mouth. I don't have a good reason. I was a coward. That's the truth. Your mother and I are working on the bill with the vendors. We don't need your money. I'm writing because I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I should have walked you inside. I'll carry that. Dad. I read it 5 times. I read it at my desk, on the tube home, and once more sitting on my couch with the lights off. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix anything. He didn't confront Diane. He didn't demand she apologize. He didn't explain why he'd spent decades choosing peace over his own daughter. But it was honest, and it was the first honest thing anyone in my family had said to me since this started. I didn't reply right away. I needed time. A week later I wrote back. Dad, thank you. That means more than you know. I'm not ready to come home or to pretend everything is fine. But I read your email, and I'll keep reading it. Athena. Short. Careful. Leaving the door open exactly 1 inch. Not wide enough to be walked through, but not locked. He didn't write back. I didn't expect him to, but he'd said it, and I'd heard it. 6 months have passed since that Saturday at Meadow Creek Barn. I got promoted. Senior software engineer at the fintech company I've been with for 4 years. My boss cited leadership under pressure in the review. She didn't know the half of it. I started seeing a therapist, not because of the wedding, because of the 34 years before it. We've been unpacking something she calls functional over-responsibility. The belief that if I perform well enough, sacrifice enough, carry enough, the people I love will finally see me. It's the engine that powered every check I wrote, every flight I booked, every time I said fine when I meant this hurts. I video call Aunt Ruth every other Sunday. She makes coffee, I make tea, and we talk for an hour about everything and nothing. She keeps me updated on Cedar Bluff, not to gossip, but so I'm not blindsided. Diane and Frank have paid off 12,000 of the 38. They used a chunk of their retirement savings. The rest is on the loan Brooke and Garrett took out. The monthly payments are a source of tension in the Caldwell-Sinclair household. Garrett's parents are civil but distant. Margaret still hasn't forgiven Diane. Brooke and Garrett are still married. Ruth says they're in counseling. She says Garrett's a decent man who's trying, but the foundation cracked on day 1, and cracks like that don't seal easily. Diane hasn't called me, hasn't emailed, hasn't sent so much as a text. Ruth says she refers to the situation as Athena's tantrum. I suppose that's easier than calling it what it is. I don't hate my mother. I've spent a lot of therapy hours making sure of that. But I've stopped pretending her version of love didn't hurt. It did. And pretending otherwise was killing me slowly, one signed contract at a time. I'm not telling you this story so you'll hate my mother. She's flawed. She's scared. She built an image of a perfect family because the real one felt like it wasn't enough. And somewhere along the way, I became the piece that didn't fit the frame. That's not an excuse. It's just what happened. And I think part of growing up is accepting that the people who raised you are also just people, stumbling through their own fears and failures. But I am telling you this story because maybe you're living a version of it. Maybe you're the one who flies 18 hours, literally or metaphorically, to show up for people who won't hold the door open for you. Maybe you're the one signing the contracts, covering the costs, absorbing the silence, and calling it love because you don't know what else to call it. I did that for a long time. I called it duty. I called it family. I called it being the bigger person. And every time I wrote a check or swallowed an insult or pretended the empty chair at the table didn't bother me, I lost a little piece of myself. A boundary isn't punishment. It's not revenge. It's not a weapon. A boundary is the moment you say, I'm worth more than this. And then you act like it. $38,000. That's what my freedom cost. And I don't regret a single penny I didn't pay. If you're the one who always pays, emotionally, financially, spiritually, for a seat at a table that was never built for you, maybe it's time to build your own table and sit at the head of it. I didn't lose my family that day at Meadow Creek Barn. I found myself, and honestly, she was worth the wait. Thank you for staying until the end of this one. It means a lot. I want to ask you, if you were me, would you have paid the $38,000, or would you have drawn the line? Drop pay or boundary in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. If this story touched something real in you, hit like and subscribe. I share stories like this every week, about family, about boundaries, about finding your voice when the people closest to you try to silence it. And if you want more, check the description for another story I think you'll connect with. I'll see you in the next one.